Hi and welcome to another Watch Geek video. Today I'll be doing a review of an Omega Seamaster 300, or as Omega now calls it, the Diver 300, to differentiate it from the reintroduced vintage-inspired 300. Now this watch has been lent to me by a very generous viewer, so thank you Igor, once more. In fact, the next 3 watch reviews are going to be his watches, and it's been an absolute pleasure having them around. Now this watch is part of the huge Seamaster collection, and was, and to me still is, the most toolish of the collection, if we ignore the Ploprof. It was introduced in 1993 and used to be the go-to diver in the 90s if you didn't like or couldn't afford a Rolex Submariner. It was also heavily featured in James Bond movies, which led to many limited editions, with some having the counterweight of the seconds hand made with the 007 inscription. Now over the years, this watch has been slowly evolving and becoming better and better, and is now an excellent alternative to the new Planet Ocean models and the already mentioned retro-inspired 300. Now the first thing I want to cover is the 2500 movement that beats in this, as it got a bit of a bad reputation despite being excellent, well at least in this version, which is the 2500D. It is a chronometer certified movement that beats at 25,200 beats per hour and features both hacking and hand winding. It has a quick set date and 48 hours of power reserve. Now the movement is derived from the ETA 2892 movement and modified to feature the Coaxial Escapement, which has become the signature of all Omegas and to me the most interesting thing about them. The Coaxial Escapement has been invented by George Daniels, who was one of the best watchmakers that ever lived in my opinion, and was one of the few watchmakers who had the skill to make a complete watch by himself, so a true master watchmaker. Now he wanted to come up with a new escapement system, as the Swiss lever escapement, which most manufacturers use these days, although working flawlessly, is not really that efficient. The problem is that the locking and pushing, or impulse, are done by the same part. Now the locking is not that much of a problem, but the pushing part is, because the pushing is done at an angle which is inefficient and creates a lot of friction. Now the simplest way to describe it is like you're trying to move your car forward by running your hands across the back of the car at an angle. Now the coaxial movement separates the locking and pushing, which allows for the pushing part to be more direct and with a lot less friction. So like you're pushing your car directly forward, which is a lot more efficient. Now there are actually 2 versions of the coaxial escapements, the 2-level and the 3-level one. The 3-level one was the original design, and the 2-level one was a later iteration where Mr. Daniels tried to make it thinner. Now the reason I'm mentioning this is that the 2500 movement was first fitted with the 2-level escapement, which led to some reliability issues and created the already mentioned bad reputation both for these movements and the coaxial escapement itself, as it would jam over time because of the residue from lubrication that would form on the locking wheel. Now these include the 2500 A, B, and C variants of the movement. Now although this was somewhat remedied through service by replacing that wheel with one made of a different material and also reducing the amount of lube applied, it is the D version that solved the problem completely by switching to the 3-level escapement, which is how the coaxial was designed to work in the first place. Also, all of the in-house movements by Omega, the 8 and 9000 family, use this 3-level design and have proven to be very good at both timekeeping and reliability, giving the coaxial escapement finally its rightly deserved respect. Now when it comes to the specs, this watch is what one might call a perfect size, as it will fit and look great on any size wrist. The diameter is 41 mm with a lug-to-lug of very reasonable 47, or 51 if we include the bracelet end links. Now thanks to the slight curve, it wears even smaller and nicely hugs the wrist. The thickness is also very reasonable, 13 mm, and with the sloped bezel, the watch fits under the cuffs surprisingly well. The weight is a healthy 168 grams, which means you get a feeling of quality while not being too heavy. Now there's even a 36 mm version if you have really small wrists, but honestly, the way this looks on my 6.9-inch wrist, you really have to have very tiny wrists to go for the smaller one. Now the bracelet on this is excellent, there's no other way of describing it. The design does scream 90s, but it is beautifully made with solid links and end links that are held together with screws. The clasp is machined and works flawlessly with its push-button release. It also features a diver's extension, which is a simple pop-out with a fixed length, and is no match for the newer glide lock and such systems. But apparently you can fit a newer clasp that has the adjustable extension if you want extra comfort on your wrist. And comfort is where this watch and this bracelet really shines. It just hugs the wrist so nicely and feels like it becomes one with your wrist. Now, despite the aged look of the bracelet, I personally love it, and it does work with the look of the watch. The case is very classically shaped and features the famous Omega lyre lugs. Now, I love when a company sticks to a shape that is associated with them, and the lyre lugs and Omegas are one of their longest lasting designs. The whole case is nicely brushed, with the lug bevel that is polished and runs down the entire case. The watch features two crowns, with the 10 o'clock one being the helium release valve, which is used for saturation diving, meaning 99.9% of the people will never have to use it. And if you want to know what saturation diving is, check out this excellent video by BBC. Now, to put it in a couple of sentences, the divers are pressurized in a chamber that uses a special breathing mix of gases that also contains helium. And since helium molecules are very, very small, they can penetrate the watch gaskets and get inside the watch while it's pressurized. And then as the diver and the watch gets depressurized, the molecules can't escape the watch fast enough, which results in a difference in pressure between the watch and its surroundings. That can lead to the crystal popping out. Now on this, a diver would unscrew the crown of the helium release valve, and helium would exit that way. So it's basically a spring-loaded one-way valve. The other crown is the one used for setting up the time and winding, and it's rather small and well protected by crown guards. Now the crown and the crown guards are one more thing that reveals the watch was designed in the 90s, so it brings out some nostalgia in me. The bezel has 120 clicks and is very precise and quite easy to move. Now if it was tighter, it would be more difficult to move because of the smooth bezel teeth. Well, they're not really teeth, but more like differently angled surfaces, that according to Omega recalls the uneven surface of the ocean. Everything lines up perfectly as you might expect, and there's just the slightest play from side to side. The insert is ceramic on the newer versions and is simply beautiful to look at. It also means it will be scratch-free for ages. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the crystal, as Omega is one of those manufacturers that think having more of something is always better, so they apply the anti-reflective coating on both sides. And if you watch my videos, you know I pretty much hate that, as I find it pointless on a sapphire. I mean, what's the point of having an almost scratch-proof crystal if you're going to apply an easily scratchable coating on top? You will end up with a watch that will look like it has a scratched-up crystal, despite it being unscratched. And my point is proven even on this very watch, because if you look closely, you will see it has already picked up a few scratches on the coating, despite the rest of the watch not really looking like it had a tough life. Now this is especially a shame considering the scratch resistance of the already mentioned ceramic bezel. The dial is my favorite part, especially this blue lacquered version, as it's very dark, almost black, and has a certain depth to the color, like it drags you into itself. It does have a lot of inscriptions, and although I'm not usually a fan of those and prefer cleaner dials, on this, it just kind of works and makes it look even better. The hour markers and hands are both silver framed, meaning they match each other. Now the hands are skeletonized, and although again I would prefer regular hands, these have become such a signature design of this watch that I'm okay with them. The date is at 3 o'clock and done in black to blend with the dial as much as possible. And thanks to the already mentioned darkness of the blue, it does a great job. The color of the Loom during the day is more ivory than white, which gives a sophisticated look to the watch. And when you put the watch in the dark, you get another surprise, as the minute hand and the loomed pip on the bezel glow green to be easily distinguished from the hour hand and markers that glow blue. Now, a really nice detail. The Loom is also quite strong, but works slightly different than what I'm used to with Seiko divers. You see, with Seiko, when you walk into the dark, you get this initial explosion of Loom that fades away to a certain level within a minute and then stays that way. With this, when you walk into the dark, you don't get that explosion of Loom, but it also doesn't fade away. It just keeps it at the level you first had when you walked into the dark. Like it's playing it cool, not trying to show off, but just being enough. And I really like it. Now flipping the watch over reveals the deeply engraved caseback with the wave pattern that in a way gives tribute to the early versions of this watch that had the wave pattern on the dial. Then we have a Seamaster seahorse that's been adorning these watches since 1958 and the Seamaster inscription. So very simple but far from boring. So to conclude, the Seamaster 300, which is now renamed the Seamaster Diver 300, is an excellent watch and a true classic that does have some retro elements of the 90s still visible in its design, but through constant evolution has moved quite a lot in terms of materials used and the build quality. It's a great alternative to the overly thick, fully in-house Omegas, as those go to more than 16mm in thickness, which makes this watch incredibly slim in comparison, and that's why I think Omega should keep it in production. The watch is truly a joy to wear and a joy to look at, and it is also one of the cheapest ways of getting a coaxial movement that actually works the way it was designed to. Well, this pretty much completes this week's review, so thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe by pressing this button right here. And until the next video, bye.